NBA analyst from ESPN, Mr. Tim Legler, 10-year NBA veteran as well. Welcome, Tim.
What's happening? Good to be on, guys.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man.
So, any big trades that did happen that may have taken you back a little bit or surprised you, or also some trades that ultimately didn't happen that surprised you, maybe especially with the LA Lakers, who seem to be in a free fall right now?
You know, I would say these days I'm so used to being what comes my way at the trading deadline that I'm not shocked by what actually goes down. And most of the trades that went down were rumored to happen, so I was kind of anticipating it. I think something that didn't happen was Philadelphia not getting Kyle Lowry. I really thought they were going to go all in on making that happen. I think ultimately what may have changed their mind, it's interesting how this works, playing as well as they have while Embiid's been out has actually changed their mind on what they're willing to give up to swing for the fences with Kyle Lowry. And that's really interesting to me because I still think they were going to need him to have a legitimate fighting chance against a team like Brooklyn, because ultimately Brooklyn has as much offensive talent at the top of the roster as any team in the history of this league. When you talk about raw scoring power, there's never been a team that's had three guys on the same team that Brooklyn has. So for Philly, I thought adding Lowry, a guy that's had big playoff moments, he's won a championship, he's a leader. He could also help take the ball out of Ben Simmons' hands more, which I think is important for that team, particularly in big moments because of Simmons' inability to score outside the paint. I just think it bogs their offense down at times. So that, to me, was a little bit surprising. It didn't happen. They got George Hill instead. I like George Hill a lot. He's going to help them. He's a nice veteran guard to pick up, a lot of playoff experience. He can certainly make threes playing off Simmons and Embiid, but he's not going to have that dramatic impact and give you a 25-point game in a playoff game if that's what it takes on a given night. Kyle Lowry could have done that. So a little bit surprised that they weren't able to make that happen. Lakers standing pat, I'm not shocked by it, but I do think it's a little unnerving if you're a Laker fan, because they just kind of sat there watched the Nuggets get better. They watched the Clippers get better. Utah is already a team that's kind of on the radar that they didn't expect to be looking up at in the Western Conference. So they just kind of sat there expecting, hey, we're going to get these two guys back. And when we do, we added two guys in the offseason in Schroeder and Harrell. We're right back where we need to be and defend our title. But I think that Denver and the Clippers has got a lot closer to them.
Most impactful trade. Which one do you think has set up a team for the best possible finish to this NBA season?
I think it's a tie between Aaron Gordon and Rajon Rondo. So Aaron Gordon goes to the Nuggets, and you looked at Denver a year ago. They beat the Clippers, go to the conference finals. They've got a guy in Jokic who's in the MVP discussion. They've got and a big that dominates the game and controls the game like no other big right now in the league. You got an all-star guard in Jamal Murray, who showed you last year what he's capable of doing in the postseason under pressure. Michael Porter Jr. is that next guy. He's had some injuries to deal with. He was out beginning of this year. He's every night getting better, and he's very close to just stamping his arrival in this league as a star. So what do? You go out and you add Aaron Gordon. I mean, you talk about adding the perfect fit, a fourth option now offensively, because he's certainly no slouch offensively. He can give you, 16, 18, 20-point games when you need it if one of those other guys is not playing well. But more importantly for me, it's his defensive prowess and his size to be able to guard LeBron and AD and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I mean, you just added a legitimate all-league caliber defensive player to your mix that you don't have to run any plays for, so your offense isn't disrupted. That's a big addition. And then Rondo, the Clippers, and I look at the Clippers and say, well, what have they lacked? Even last year when Kawhi and Paul George their first year together, but even in the years before that when they had Chris Paul and Blake and all those guys, and they just kept coming up small in the playoffs. Couple things. One, vocal leadership. Rondo brings vocal leadership to this team. And when you have two guys as quiet as Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, you need the emotion on the court and that little bit of spark plug. He brings that. He brings an IQ that's off the charts. He's one of the smartest players to ever play in this league. And then for me, most importantly, look at his playoff resume and go back and find specific moments in time that he has absolutely come up in a huge way on both ends of the floor to get his team through an important moment or a series. And he did it again last year. I don't know if the Lakers win a championship last year without Rajon Rondo. So you add that to the mix. The Clippers got substantially better. So I look at those two teams now and in a different way than I did, 24 hours ago.
Definitely. And now you're talking about a West where for a couple days now I've been talking about, as they increasingly lose basketball games and fall down the rankings of where they are more likely, if LeBron and AD do not come back and they don't make something move here with Andre Drummond or maybe Lamarcus Aldridge, somebody to solidify that front court for that back or that front court for him. This is a team that could be looking at a play-in game to get into the playoffs when the guys get back and get healthy, if they do. Yeah, no, it's a good point. I don't know that they'll fall that far. I think they'll be back soon enough to keep it from getting to that point. But here's a big difference. Okay, if you end up in even say the 4-5, you are now going to have to play. You're going to play your tail off to get out of the first round, and then immediately get the 1 seed. So there's no easy path. If you end up where they should have, which is like 1 or 2. Not that 7 or 8 is going to be a pushover. There's some good teams down there, too. I mean, you could get a Dallas team with Luka Doncic on it potentially. So you got good teams down there, too. But you're not going to sweat that out the way that you are now with this path. And there's no doubt these teams are coming for them. And I think they stood pat because they believe their big acquisitions took place in the summer. They added Dennis Schroeder, they added Montrezl Harrell to go to a championship team that's already got 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA on it, in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So that's the way they viewed it, and that happens some years. Everybody gets busy at the trading deadline, and some teams say, well, wait a second, we already made our moves in the summer. And so it feels a little bit more like, earth-shattering to Lakers fans say, yeah, we didn't do anything. Well, yeah, they did a lot, actually, in the offseason. But the question is going to be, do they get back enough time, and does Anthony Davis stay healthy once he does come back to be able to make this run again through a much tougher top of the West? And it's not in the bubble anymore. This is going to be now different. You're going to have to travel, whether it's crowds in the building or not. It's just a different environment than what they faced a year ago in the bubble when the conditions were perfect for veteran players like LeBron and AD to take that wear and tear off their bodies and be able to have that run. That's now added back into the mix with some, possibly serious travel here in the postseason. So it's just a different element now for the Lakers than it was. I thought it was a foregone conclusion they were going to win the championship before the season. I said, why even play? Let's just play 10 games and play the playoffs, because I didn't see any team being able to do it. But Brooklyn obviously changed all that by adding James Harden, so that immediately changed that conversation. And now with what Denver has done, with what the Clippers have done, with how good Utah's looked all year, Phoenix is interesting, but I think they're too young maybe to make that jump. And then even the top of the East, Philly, better than they have been, no question. Milwaukee, definitely the best option they've had since Giannis got there with the 3 guys they added. Miami adds Victor Oladipo to a team that went to the finals. Across the board, all of these teams making moves to get better. So the Lakers just found themselves in a much more crowded neighborhood. We're speaking with Tim Legler from ESPN, NBA analyst, 10-year NBA veteran. After you talked to us today about the Brooklyn Nets, are they the team right now that everybody's looking up at and who they're going to have to figure out to beat in the playoffs? It has to be. It just has to be. There's just never been a collection that we've ever seen with this kind of raw scoring power. It's really kind of incredible. You think about the 3 guys that are paired together, and they're going to make it work because, was the big question. What's Kyrie Irving going to do? He could implode at any time. Look, and he's still a little bit iffy, with some of the moves he makes, including a 3-game departure for the team for personal reasons right now that also coincided with his birthday. I'm not making any assumptions. I'm just saying that these are the kind of things people talk about. What went on at the beginning of the year, when he missed time. So, can you 100% count on him? I don't know that you can, but I think the one thing he's proven when he is there and he's locked in, he's fully accepting of this role playing off of James Harden, just like he did playing off of LeBron James when he was at his best as an NBA player. They figured that part out. It's James Harden's team. Once they got that settled, Kevin Durant doesn't care who he plays with. You could put Kevin Durant with you could find the 3 most selfish players in the history of the league. Kevin Durant's still going to get 30, and he's going to do it efficiently because he's just that good. So I'm not worried about him. And now that they have figured that out, you look at this team and you go, how are you supposed to come up with enough of a defensive game plan to stop all of the ways that those guys can beat you, including with their passing? And who has the personnel to do it? Nobody. So you look at that team and say, look, if those guys come back and they stay back,
it's hard to imagine somebody being able to beat that team 4 times before they beat you.
Yeah, when the playoffs come, that's always the biggest question I ask when you got teams like that. You play 7 games, you tell me you're going to beat them 4 times. That's incredibly difficult. Let's get you out of here on this. Tim Legler from ESPN, NBA analyst, talking to us about the NBA season and the trade deadline that ended, the buyout market. A couple names that keep being talked about: Lamarcus Aldridge down in San Antonio, who's 35, and the younger version, Andre Drummond in Cleveland. Do you see a good fit for either one of those players? And if so, where would that look like?
Yeah, I like what I'm hearing about Aldridge to Miami. I think for me that probably even moves the needle a little bit more than Victor Oladipo, because Victor Oladipo, I think, has got more in the tank in terms of being close to what he was at his peak. But I also think, man, they got a lot of guys that do the same thing. So how's that going to work? I mean, Victor Oladipo was doing whatever he wanted to down in Houston. Same thing in Indiana. Now he's going to a team that they move it differently, they share it differently. They've got 4 other guys that are playmakers. So I got to see what that looks like. But Aldridge is a different element. He's a guy that, if you want to slow the game down and throw it into the post and run your offense through him for several minutes, he's still a really difficult matchup in the low post. He's a very good pick-and-pop player, and they've got a ton of guys that run off ball screens with the ball. So be able to knock down an 18-foot jump shot playing off of those guys, I think he's a really nice fit for them. And then, Andre Drummond, the big guy is just not valued to that extent the way that he plays. I mean, he's a legit big, beating you up in the paint on the glass. You need that, but I don't know that I look at him and say, wow, that's game changer if he goes here or goes here. Maybe a team like Boston, if they can pick him up for cheap. I know the Knicks are rumored. That might be an interesting one, because who would have thought the Knicks would be sitting where they are in the 4 or 5 spot in the Eastern Conference at this point. So they might be closer than they thought. You go out and you add a big. There's a lot of rumors about that. He's definitely going to help somebody. But I also think the way the game is played now, there's just not a premium on those guys. One last point I want to make. One thing that did happen yesterday, the trading deadline, it may have saved the NBA this year, because this regular season has been brutal. Nobody plays. I mean, any game you watch on any given night, put on a marquee matchup, nobody's out there. I've never seen so many star players not playing in the marquee games that everybody looks forward to. It's been brutal. And so now what happens, you got a different adrenaline about what this postseason is going to look like. So I think, if nothing else, yesterday it saved the league, because now everybody's looking forward to May 18th and the postseason starting, I think, at a higher level than they were, because this has been a very difficult regular season to watch because of all the guys missing time.
Hey, I'm there with you, man. I'm not a big NBA guy during the regular season. I usually tune in and really kind of lock it in when the playoffs come. So, regular season basketball in the NBA, has kind of become one of those things where, you ultimately know where it's going to go, at some point. So I get it. I hope this trade deadline really moves some things around, like you said. Everybody, Tim Legler from ESPN NBA Analyst. Tim, thanks for joining us, bud.
Sure. Appreciate it. Talk to you guys soon.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.